Hi, everybody. How's it going? Today I'm going to talk about this Netflix documentary called Wild Wild Country. I think this came out in 2018 or maybe 2019, so I'm a couple years late, but I just got around to reviewing this. I never watched this. I really like true crime, and I like documentaries as well, not just crime documentaries. And for some reason, I never watched this. This seems to be the case with me a lot. I kind of judge a book by its cover a lot. I'm kind of finding out about myself when it comes to films. And I think I just said, oh, that's going to be a typical Netflix crime thing. There's so many of those. I love them, but, it's like watered down. I'm not going to be into that. I don't think it's going to be very good. And then I don't know how it came up, but a lot of people were saying it was excellent. So, anyways, I gave it a shot and I loved it. I thought it was excellent. It was surprising how good it was. It was very good. I have many good things to say about it. I do have a couple nitpicks with it, but I think overall it was an excellent documentary. This is basically the non-spoiler review for you folks if you haven't seen it by this point. It was essentially about a cult called the Rajneesh that moved into this area in Oregon, and they basically started taking over everything, and they were kind of escalating the severity of their actions basically, and about what happened. This was in the early 80s, mid 80s. It was pretty crazy. A lot of people, I tried to not look at anything about this before I watched it. All I knew was that it was about a cult in the desert, and there was this Indian guy who was their leader. That's all I knew. And I did see a couple little things before I watched it. I tried not to, but I did see a couple of people say this is just going to get crazier and crazier, and you'll never be able to tell where it's going. So I was expecting a few twists here and there, but they were crazy. Like, they came out of nowhere, and it is true that you really can't predict. I mean, do not look up anything if you want to really watch this and get the full experience and you don't know about it. Don't look up anything, because what happens just gets crazier and crazier and crazier. This is a 6 episode series. Each episode's a little over an hour, about an hour and 10 minutes or so a piece, so they're longer episodes. And yeah, I just could never tell where this was going. It just kept escalating into insanity. And I think the sentiment that a lot of people have said, that even that grew up during this time period, were like, how the hell have I not known about this? And it is crazy. Like, if I could, I wasn't born, I wasn't alive in 1985, but yeah, to think that, how could I have missed something? This is insane what happens. This is totally crazy. So it is very entertaining. It is very well made. It is very well shot. I think that this is about a step above your typical Netflix true crime documentary. Even the ones that are pretty bog standard, I still like. Just that you've seen a million Netflix true crime. You know how they are. They're pretty easy to digest content. I like those too, but this is a bit of a step above that, I think. I think in terms of the storytelling, and I think I wanted to be taken a little bit more seriously as a film, rather than just okay, here, consume this content kind of thing. So I did appreciate that. Although I think at certain points, there are long scenes in this without dialogue. There's stuff like that that you wouldn't expect from a standard, kind of easy to digest crime drama. So I felt that they were definitely being a little bit more artistic with things, which I appreciated. I will say, though, that separate to that, there was a bit of pacing issues occasionally. I think, in terms of actually how the story progressed, the actual events that unfolded and how they were told, kind of went on a little bit at certain points, being, like I said, 6 episodes. I think they probably could have cut this down to five. They possibly even could have cut this down to 4 episodes, but I think certainly cutting an episode and tightening things up probably would have made this a bit of a tighter documentary. I really do think it was a touch long in the tooth, especially towards the end, but overall, that's a minor complaint. It was an excellent documentary. You are going to enjoy it if you like this sort of stuff. It is a wild ride, wild country for sure. Yeah, and so let me talk about some spoiler stuff. So, um, this was a kind of a fascinating thing. I couldn't always quite get the angle they were going for on this, because they do show a lot of the different sides, which is kind of unusual for a documentary. They showed Osho, their leader, their religious like leader, basically. They showed stuff from him and stuff from the cult, and tried to give you a perspective on what they see, but they never really focus too much on that. But they did try to, like, their leader, basically their spokeswoman, whose name is Sheila. She was basically the brains of everything, right? Osho was the religious Jesus-like figure, and Sheila was basically the one running the actual operation. And they showed a lot of her through archival footage and through actual interviews with her in the present time. And they also showed a lot of the townspeople. The townspeople were shown to be extremely bigoted. They were primarily white, um, very Christian, conservative folks, and they really wanted you to know how bigoted they were pretty much right from the get go. Before they even started doing anything weird when they just moved in, they wanted to basically show how much they disliked these people just because they were different. And they wanted them out of their town, and they started trying to do things to get them out of their town. And it just progresses basically from that. Now, not everyone is like that. They do show some people that were fairly, they thought they were weird, but they were fairly neutral with them. If they do anything wrong, then they do something wrong. If they're not, leave them alone. So they were trying to show these different angles, but it's like it ended up kind of like, I don't know if the intent was to be neutral and show you both sides, or the intent was kind of to pull the rug out from under you, because the cult ends up doing things so insane that there's no way you could defend them. Like, they fucking try to kill multiple people in this. They try to poison people. They commit election fraud. They commit thousands of felonies throughout this. Like, one of the prosecutors basically says, like, how do you prosecute thousands of felonies? And they commit bioterrorism. So they're fucking nuts. And I don't know if that's what it was trying to show you. Like, no, this is kind of how a cult lures you in. Um, like, in the beginning, you could almost kind of see how this cult was weird. They were into some weird sex stuff, and they were freaking weird. But they're not hurting anyone. They're doing their own thing. And almost like, oh, it's them retaliating. Like, none of this would have happened if the townspeople left them alone. But it doesn't really end up being like that to me. To me, this ends up just another look at how a cult kind of sucks people in. Like, I really did kind of get the feeling that they were trying to mimic the feeling of having a blanket over your eyes from a cult, because they just, it's so seamlessly they start doing crazy shit for this cult. And it's so interesting because Osho, he says multiple times throughout this, I'm not Gandhi, I'm not Jesus. He says this like 5 times throughout the runtime of this. I think even Sheila mentions that at one point. Like, he really wanted to drive in the point to people, like, I'm not trying to control these people. I'm not a godlike figure. And it's so, ironic, because these people, they live their life solely for this guy. I mean, they worship him. They do worship him like Jesus. He's basically convinced these people to follow him under the guise that, no, I'm not a godlike figure. And you can see it. There's a lot of archival footage of the cult, which is, to my knowledge, very unusual that you get to see a lot of. I mentioned that you don't get to see a lot of day-to-day stuff, but there is a lot of footage of the cult that they will show. And you can just see the way they look at this guy. Like, they are dazed, their eyes are wide. They look like crazy people. And they just worship this guy, and they will do anything to protect him. They don't think about anything else, and that's why when this stuff escalates, it's like they'll easily do this shit. They are so they adore this guy so much. They'll kill anyone. They'll do anything. It doesn't matter what the rules are. And they all have a very arrogant sense about them too, which I think in part was instilled by Sheila. This woman is a complete psychopath, no remorse, crazy businesswoman. And that kind of brings up the point of, like, was this cult, did they really know what they were doing, or were they that deluded? And I really think they did know what they were doing. I think the people in the cult, for the most part, I think there were probably some people towards the end, definitely they'll show, that were like, all right, this shit's crazy, we're getting out of here. But I think most of the people probably, as in most cults, think they're doing something really good. I think that they really probably love the lifestyle they were leading. They thought they were spreading peace and positivity. I think the majority of people probably thought that they were having a great time and everything was okay. People like Sheila, no. People like Osho, there are even people who are like, I saw that were like, oh, I watched this, I was on Team Osho or something. Give me a break, man. Like, this guy is a classic con man. He's in India and he gathers this group of people, and when it's not working out for him there and he needs to leave, he just fucking leaves them. He just gets in his Rolls Royce. The number of Rolls Royces he has increases throughout the runtime of this, and he leaves. He just fucking leaves them there, and then he calls them back to help him build a town. And then Sheila just leaves when the going gets too tough, and then Osho leaves when the going gets too tough. So they just fucking desert all these people. Once they're of no use to them anymore. And he does that with, you'll see, with his secretary, who basically does all the work. And he ends up getting involved with some Hollywood people who start getting him hooked on drugs, and he pushes Sheila away. This is all kind of classic stuff. So it's a very subtle control that's enacted over time. Coffee break. Um, Geez, what more is there to talk about this thing? I did really enjoy that though, and like also Sheila had a lot of things videotaped. I almost wondered if she knew, like, I'm gonna cash in on this shit later, like I'm going to use all this archival footage. I don't know if she would be able to do that, but I had a feeling she planned stuff like that. And they almost make it seem at certain points like Sheila's just totally in control. Osho doesn't really know what's going on. But I think that he basically got all these people to adore him, and then he went on silence breaks for years where he never talked, but he would still talk to his inner circle, which was basically, these higher up people and these Hollywood people who gave him jewels and drugs and stuff like that. And yeah, I definitely think that dude knew what was going on. Kind of a classic con man. So wow, this was fucking crazy. And it was sad too, because there were people who you could tell were not con people who were roped into that shit. And yeah, it was fucking crazy. No one really ends up dying to my knowledge. So it's not like a Jonestown crazy ending, but it's still insane to think about. That's one of the things I thought watching this. It's so crazy what goes on that I almost thought it was fake for the first like episode or two, because they just they show you, like I said, a lot of archival footage, and the actions of the people are so just unnatural. Everything about them is so fake and weird. I thought I was watching like a 70s exploitation movie. It was weird. So then I find out, of course, no, it is real. It really happened. So you kind of have to remind yourself throughout the viewing of this that this shit really happened. I'm watching real footage. And I will say I don't normally do content warnings. I'm doing this at the end of the video, so I don't know how much help that is. I doubt anyone stuck around this long for this rambling rant. But there's really one very difficult scene to watch, and it's to do with like their weird sex therapy stuff. And I'm not like a prude by any means, but like you have to remind yourself it's real people. They're showing them like having sex and doing all this weird stuff, and it's really graphic. And it just kind of it shocked me. I don't want to say it blew me away, but it kind of did. It like shocked me. It really showed like, and was this shown out of context? It might have been, but it was still really fucking weird to watch. And almost to the detriment, like I didn't want to like experience enjoyment off of the strangeness of them in a weird way, but they showed that and it kind of came out of nowhere, and it was so shocking and graphic and real. It was real. That's the best way I could describe it. It kind of knocked some sense into you, like this is real. It was like they were pulling the rug out from under you, like, okay, we got you settled. Here's shit's gonna get real. This is gonna be a real, like, I kind of thought this is gonna be a serious documentary, like this is gonna be a heavy watch, and they never really went back there. So that kind of almost soured my experience just a bit, because I was like, I really thought this was going to get really dark and serious, and it doesn't. I mean, the content matter is definitely dark, bioterrorism and stuff, but it never really got the tone, I should say, got back to that darkness. And it's almost like they showed that they just wanted to show that to show how weird they were. So I don't know how do I feel about that, but yeah, this is my thoughts on it. It was a very fascinating thing. I will say, if you've seen this and you enjoyed it, and you haven't seen, God, I can't remember the name, Leaving Scientology, Leah Remini's Netflix special on Scientology. Watch that, because that's about another insane cult that has done potentially worse things than this cult. And if you're interested in this, how cults That deals mostly with how cults manipulate people and get them to join and just make them think everything's okay. I definitely suggest watching that one. It's also an excellent watch. So that's that. Hope everybody's well. Take care. Peace out.